The scratches on the concrete wall had become Clara Duarte's calendar. 7 groups of 7 lines crossed through. Another week in the basement of the Victorian house on Maple Street, in the quiet town of Millbrook, Pennsylvania. "Clara, honey, breakfast." Her mother's voice floated down through the floorboards, accompanied by the familiar click of multiple locks being undone. At 24, Clara had spent the last 7 years watching dust motes dance in the single shaft of light that filtered through the narrow window near the ceiling. The basement had been renovated for her. A bed, a small bathroom, shelves of approved books, and a desk where she was allowed to write in journals that her parents would later read and burn. Margaret Duarte descended the stairs, her practical shoes clicking against each wooden step. She carried a tray with scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice, the same breakfast for 2,555 days. "How are you feeling today, sweetheart?" Margaret's voice carried that practiced sweetness, like artificial honey. "Fine, Mom." Clara had learned that any other answer led to longer conversations, more scrutiny. "Your father's at the church council meeting. They're planning the summer fundraiser." Margaret set the tray on the small table. "Mrs. Henderson asked about you again. I told her you're still recovering from your condition." The condition. The lie that had become Clara's prison. A mysterious illness that required complete isolation, protection from the outside world's corrupting influences. To Millbrook's 3,000 residents, the Duartes were devoted parents caring for their fragile daughter. "I was thinking," Clara said carefully, measuring each word, "maybe I could sit in the backyard today, just for a few minutes?" Margaret's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Oh, honey, you know what the specialist said. The stimulation could trigger another episode. We can't risk your progress." There were no specialists. There had never been any specialists. "Besides," Margaret continued, smoothing her skirt, "there are new neighbors moving in next door. We wouldn't want them asking questions, would we? You know how gossip spreads in small towns." After her mother left, securing the locks, all 6 of them, Clara ate mechanically. She had learned to find purpose in small acts of defiance. Today, she would hide another piece of paper in the heating vent. Tomorrow, she would tap against the pipes during the hours her parents attended their weekly Bible study. She moved to the desk and opened the journal her parents had given her. The pages were filled with careful entries about gratitude, recovery, and love for her family. But between the lines, in a code she'd developed using the first letter of every 3rd word, she wrote the truth. Help. Imprisoned. 7 years. Clara Duarte. Millbrook, PA. Please. The autumn rain began to tap against the small window, and Clara closed her eyes, imagining what it would feel like on her skin. Somewhere above, she heard her father's truck pull into the driveway. Richard Duarte was home from the church, ready to play the role of the concerned father to anyone who might be watching. But no one was watching. No one ever watched closely enough. Or so her parents believed. Chapter 2. Messages in Static. 3 months before the extraction, Clara discovered the radio. It was hidden behind a loose panel in the basement's utility closet, an ancient ham radio that must have belonged to the house's previous owners. Her heart hammered as she carefully extracted it, terrified that her parents had cameras she didn't know about. But desperation had finally outweighed fear. Every Tuesday and Thursday, between 2 and 4 a.m., when her parents' snoring echoed through the floorboards, Clara would carefully connect the radio to the electrical outlet. She had learned its quirks, how to minimize static, how to find active frequencies, how to speak in code. "CQ, CQ, CQ," she would whisper into the darkness. "This is Songbird. Songbird calling CQ." For weeks, nothing but static answered. Then, on a cold October night, a voice crackled through. "Songbird, this is Night Owl. I copy you. What's your 20? Clara's hands shook. "Night Owl, I need help. I'm being held against my will. Millbrook, Pennsylvania. The Victorian on Maple Street. Copy that, Songbird. Are you in immediate danger?" "No, but I've been here 7 years. My parents, they won't let me leave." A pause. "Songbird, I'm a retired police officer. Can you provide more details?" Over the following weeks, Clara built trust with Night Owl, whose real name was Jim Martinez, living 2 states away. She told him everything. The locks, the lies about her condition, the lack of identification documents, the years of isolation. "We need proof," Jim had said. "Something concrete. Can you get photos? Documents?" Clara had found ways. Using an old Polaroid camera her parents had forgotten about, she photographed the locks, the barred window, her journals. She discovered her birth certificate hidden in her father's study during one of their church outings, along with documents she didn't understand, papers about a trust fund, psychiatric evaluations that had never happened, forms declaring her mentally incompetent. The most damning evidence came from her mother's meticulously kept records, journals detailing Clara's treatment, including forced medication, punishment schedules, and plans to keep her safe from herself indefinitely. Songbird, Jim's voice came through one night, more serious than ever. I've been in touch with some people, federal people. What your parents are doing, it's bigger than local police. These documents you've described suggest fraud, false imprisonment, and abuse. But extracting you is going to require special resources. I don't understand. Your father has connections. Church, local government, and those trust fund documents. There's money involved. Big money. The FBI is interested, but they need a way to get you out safely before your parents can destroy evidence or... He paused. Or hurt you. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. After 7 years, someone believed her. Someone was going to help. There's a special unit, Jim continued. They handle sensitive extractions. Former military, now working with federal agencies. They're very, very good at what they do. But Songbird, when they come, you need to be ready. It'll happen fast. When? Soon. Keep your radio on channel 14550. When you hear the Songbird flies at dawn, that's your signal. Be ready to move. The rain outside had turned to sleet, tapping against the basement window like Morse code. Clara hid the radio and returned to her bed, her heart still racing. For the first time in 7 years, she allowed herself to imagine freedom. Above her, she heard her father's heavy footsteps pacing. Had he heard something? She forced her breathing to slow, feigning sleep. Richard Duarte stood at the basement door listening, but all he heard was silence. His daughter was behaving as always. The locks remained secure. Their secret remained safe. He had no idea that 500 miles away, Jim Martinez was uploading Clara's evidence to a secure FBI server, where it would be analyzed by a task force specializing in cult-like family structures and financial abuse. And he had no idea that within 72 hours, that task force would reach out to a very special unit, one that had extracted hostages from some of the most dangerous places on Earth. Clara's prison was about to meet its match. Chapter 3. The Songbird flies at dawn. Plotted dramatic Green Berets rescue scene with cinematic precision. So now I need to write Chapter 3, which is the climactic rescue scene. I'll focus on the Green Berets' precise operation, the tension and drama of the extraction, Clara's emotions during the rescue, realistic tactical details, the confrontation with her parents, making it cinematic while keeping it grounded in reality. The message came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. The Songbird flies at dawn. Clara's eyes snapped open in the darkness. She had been sleeping with the radio under her pillow for 3 weeks, the earpiece pressed against her ear. Her hands trembled as she quietly rose, pulling on the clothes she had prepared. Jeans, sneakers, a dark sweater. Everything she couldn't bear to leave. A photo of herself before the imprisonment, her grandmother's ring hidden in the hem of a pillowcase, and the journal with her coded messages, fit into a small cloth bag. Above her, the house was silent. Her parents always took sleeping pills on Monday nights, a habit Clara had counted on. At exactly 4 a.m. she heard it, the subtle buzz of electronic interference. Someone was jamming the house's security system. Then, nothing. Silence so complete it felt louder than noise. The basement door's locks began to turn, not with keys, with something else. Each lock clicked open with professional precision. Clara pressed herself against the far wall, her heart hammering so hard she was sure it would wake the entire neighborhood. The door opened silently. 6 figures descended, moving like shadows. Night vision goggles, tactical gear, weapons held at ready position. Not police, something more. The lead operator raised his hand, and the others froze. He lifted his goggles, revealing intense brown eyes that somehow managed to be both dangerous and kind. He approached slowly, lowering his weapon, and when he was close enough that only Clara could hear, he spoke. Ma'am, I'm Master Sergeant David Chen, United States Army Special Forces. We're here by federal order. Your extraction begins now. Clara's legs nearly gave out. You're real? Yes, ma'am. Jim Martinez sends his regards. Are you ready to leave? She nodded, unable to speak. Jenkins, Walker, secure the upstairs, Chen commanded in a whisper. Rodriguez, get the evidence from the study. Mitchell, watch the perimeter. Torres, you're with me and Ms. Duarte. What about my parents? Clara whispered. Federal agents are standing by. They'll be arrested as soon as you're secure. Ma'am, we need to move. They guided her up the stairs. Through the kitchen she hadn't seen in 7 years. Everything looked smaller than she remembered. The operators moved with silent efficiency, covering angles, checking corners, professional, lethal if necessary. As they reached the living room, the lights flicked on. Richard Duarte stood at the top of the main staircase, his hunting rifle raised. "Clara, get back to your room, now. Drop the weapon." 3 operators had their weapons trained on him instantly. "You don't understand." Richard's voice was desperate. "She's sick. She needs help. We're protecting her." Margaret appeared behind him, her face a mask of fury. "How dare you break into our home? Clara, tell them how we've cared for you." Clara stepped forward, Chen's steady presence beside her. 7 years of words bubbled up, but all she managed was, "No more lies." "Federal agents! Nobody move!" The front door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn. "Richard Duarte, Margaret Duarte, you're under arrest for kidnapping, false imprisonment, fraud." The list continued as Clara was quickly ushered outside. The cold November air hit her like a physical force. Real air. Free air. Her knees buckled, but Chen caught her. "I've got you. Ma'am, you're safe now." The neighborhood was waking up, porch lights flicking on, faces appearing in windows. Mrs. Henderson from next door stood in her bathrobe, mouth agape. The perfect Christian couple being led away in handcuffs while their sick daughter was escorted by military operators. Millbrook would talk about this for decades. A black SUV waited at the curb. As Chen helped her inside, Clara looked back at the house one last time. Her prison. Her parents were being placed in separate police vehicles, her mother still screaming about Clara's condition. "Where are we going?" Clara asked as the SUV pulled away. "First to a secure medical facility for evaluation," Chen explained. "Then to meet with federal prosecutors. You're the key witness in what appears to be a significant fraud case. That trust fund your parents have been managing? It's yours. Has been since your grandmother died when you were 16. Clara's mind reeled. "She left me money? $2.3 million. Your parents have been living off it while keeping you locked up, claiming you were mentally incompetent." Jim Martinez, night owl, his investigation uncovered everything. As they drove through the sleeping town, Clara watched the world pass by through bulletproof glass. Gas stations, diners, normal people living normal lives. It felt like watching a movie. "Ma'am?" Torres, the operator sitting across from her, spoke quietly. "I've extracted people from Taliban strongholds, cartel compounds, you name it. But what you did? Surviving 7 years? Finding a way to signal for help? Maintaining your sanity? That takes a kind of courage most people don't have. You saved yourself. We just gave you a ride." Clara felt tears streaming down her face. Not from sadness, from something else entirely. Dawn was breaking over Pennsylvania, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The songbird had finally flown. Chapter 4, Into the Light. 6 months later, Clara Duarte sat in a Manhattan coffee shop, watching people rush past the window. The simple act of choosing where to go, what to drink, still felt miraculous. "How are you adjusting?" Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to the master sergeant, asked, settling into the chair across from her. Clara wrapped her hands around her cappuccino, considering. "Yesterday I took the subway by myself, stood in Times Square for 20 minutes, just experiencing it. My therapist says I'm making remarkable progress." "You are." Sarah had been Clara's victim advocate since the extraction, guiding her through the legal maze that followed. "The sentencing is next week. Are you ready?" Clara nodded. Her parents had been convicted on all charges: kidnapping, false imprisonment, fraud, forgery, and psychological abuse. The investigation had revealed years of meticulous planning. They'd begun isolating Clara when she started questioning their strict religious beliefs as a teenager. Escalating after her grandmother's death left her a substantial inheritance. "The prosecutor says they'll likely get 15 to 20 years each," Sarah continued. "The evidence you gathered was irrefutable." "I've been thinking about Jim," Clara said. "Night owl. I want to meet him." Sarah smiled. "Actually, he's in town. Flew in for the sentencing. He'd love to meet you too." That afternoon, in a quiet restaurant in Brooklyn, Clara finally met the voice in the static. Jim Martinez was smaller than she'd imagined, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and gray hair that suggested his night owl days were behind him. "Songbird," he said, standing as she approached. "It's an honor." They hugged, both crying, neither caring who saw. "You saved my life," Clara said. "No," Jim shook his head. "You saved your own life. I just had a radio and some connections. Speaking of which," he pulled out an envelope. "The operators wanted you to have this." Inside was a photograph of the 6 Green Berets who'd extracted her, signed by each. At the bottom, Master Sergeant Chen had written, The strongest person we ever rescued didn't need rescuing. She needed a door opened. Fly high, Songbird. They've been following your story, Jim explained. The whole team. Chen says they use your case in training now. How a civilian with no resources except determination and creativity could orchestrate her own rescue. Clara had used her inheritance to establish the Songbird Foundation, dedicated to helping victims of family-based captivity and control. The response had been overwhelming. Hundreds of people reaching out with similar stories of isolation, financial abuse, and families using protection as a weapon. I testified before Congress last month, Clara told Jim, about gaps in the system that allow this to happen. Parents having complete control over adult children, they claim are incompetent. The lack of oversight for homeschooling situations that are actually imprisonment. I saw the coverage. You were brilliant. I was terrified, but then I remembered being more terrified in that basement, with no one to hear me. Now I have a voice. I have to use it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant about the Foundation's newest case. A young man in Texas whose family had kept him isolated for a decade. Another one? Jim asked, recognizing the look on her face. Another one, but this time they won't have to wait 7 years. We have resources now, connections, a network of night owls. As they talked, Clara found herself touching the small bird pendant she now wore, a gift from the other survivors she'd helped. Each time she felt its weight, she remembered the scratches on the basement wall, the static of the radio, the sound of locks clicking open. But mostly, she remembered the first breath of free air, standing in her parents' driveway as dawn broke over Millbrook. The world had been so bright it hurt, but she'd kept her eyes open, taking it all in. Later that evening, Clara stood on her apartment's fire escape, looking out over the city. Her phone rang. Another interview request, another chance to shed light on hidden prisons. Clara Duarte, she answered, her voice clear and strong. The girl in the basement was gone. In her place stood a woman who had looked darkness in the face and chosen to become a lighthouse for others still trapped in the shadows. Somewhere in Pennsylvania, in separate federal prisons, Richard and Margaret Duarte were learning what real confinement felt like. And somewhere across the country, in basements and locked rooms, other songbirds heard Clara's story and began to believe that dawn was possible. The extraction had been just the beginning. The real mission, making sure no one else spent 7 years underground, had only just begun. And Clara Duarte, survivor and advocate, was ready for it. Epilogue, 5 years later, CNN breaking news. Today marks a historic moment as President Sanders signs the Clara Duarte Act into law, providing federal oversight for adults declared incompetent by family members and mandating welfare checks for homeschooled adults who haven't been seen publicly in over 6 months. Duarte herself was present at the signing. Along with the 57 survivors her foundation has helped extract from family captivity situations. When asked for comment, Duarte said simply, "No one should have to scratch their calendar on a basement wall. Today we make sure they won't have to." In related news, the 6 Green Berets who participated in the now famous Songbird extraction were honored with civilian commendations. Master Sergeant David Chen, speaking on behalf of the unit, stated, "We've rescued people from war zones who showed less courage than Clara Duarte. She reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous prisons are the ones that look like home." The Songbird Foundation reports they receive over 100 calls per week from potential victims or concerned citizens. Their 24-hour hotline has become a lifeline for those trapped in the shadows of family control. As one survivor put it, Clara didn't just escape, she left the door open for the rest of us. The Songbird had indeed flown at dawn, and brought the sunrise with her. Chapter 5. The Second Extraction. The call came at 2 a.m., exactly like Clara knew it would. "Songbird Foundation, this is Clara," she answered, already fully awake. She'd learned to sleep lightly on Tuesday nights. Somehow, the desperate always seemed to find their courage in the small hours of Tuesday mornings. Is this really Clara Duarte?" The voice was young, male, terrified. "Yes. You're safe to talk. This line is encrypted. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm 22. I'm in Ohio, Columbus, and I think I need your help." Clara moved to her home office, switching on the recording equipment. "Tell me everything, Marcus. Take your time." The story that unfolded was heartbreakingly familiar. A gifted child, homeschooled by controlling parents. A grandfather's inheritance that mysteriously required Marcus to remain under care to access. Years of isolation disguised as protection. Locks disguised as love. "They tell everyone I have autism," Marcus whispered, "that I can't function in society. But I don't. I've read the diagnostic criteria. I'm not autistic. I'm just trapped. How did you contact me? Library computer. They take me once a month, supervised. But I created a hidden partition on the public terminal 6 months ago.